and welcome to Women's Football Hub. I'm your host for this episode. I am Carolyn Kent, and with me today is our wonderful pelvic health expert, Sarah Thorne. I'm so glad to have you back. It's lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. The usual, spinning lots of plates. But you came to me with a couple of things that we should probably speak about, didn't you? What are we planning some podcasts on?
So in the next kind of couple of months, I think it's really important that we start to raise awareness about different menstrual cycle related conditions like endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, heavy menstrual bleeding. I think these are really important topics that many women and young girls are suffering with. So we're going to look to definitely do a podcast on that where we can talk through the similarities as well as the differences with those conditions and give you simple, practical things to give you the support, help you to know where to go and what you can do to help to manage those symptoms. So that's, I think, going to be a really big one that we'll get done in the next few weeks. And then today we're going to talk about female health within grassroots. This is something we've just been talking about off air that is really passionate to me and something that I am working hugely about within grassroots clubs here in London. And something I think that will add so much value to so many coaches who are volunteers. They do their badges, they are doing their best, but there is also so many areas of female sport, regardless of age group, that they're not sure about and maybe don't feel comfortable about. So I'm really excited that we can get stuck into this topic and again, add value and direction for coaches.
I'm very excited. So let's break down some terms because as a baby researcher, I do like to have definitions of terms. So when we talk about grassroots, who is this therefore aimed at?
So we are talking about your local club that you go and play for. And we know that there are hundreds of thousands of teams. And what's wonderful is over the last 5 years, we've seen such an increase in female grassroots teams. Even my daughter's team alone, at her under 11 age, we've got 3, nearly 4 teams at that age group. So we're talking about your local club. It's not connected to an academy. We're not talking about professionals. So we are hitting and want to hit every single local club player.
Perfect. Now, let's talk about certain facets of female health, because when we talk about female health, it really is quite a kind of broad scope of things. So I'm going to let you go through the things that you're going, do you know what, these are the things that we're seeing, because that should be hopefully practically implementable for anybody listening who's with a grassroots club. On you go.
So when we think about female health, it affects every single woman, girl from the time they're born. And at different parts in their life, different elements of female health is going to be more prominent. So if we look at the whole female health cycle, it can be from injury, performance, perinatal, so getting pregnant to pregnancy and postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, puberty, nutrition, periods. And actually what we know is that all of those are all interlinked. So when we're thinking about how does this relate to our grassroots clubs, I think specifically for this podcast, we are thinking about helping those teams that are anywhere from their pre-puberty age. So you're thinking about under 10s, 11s, all the way up to under 16s, which is actually, as we know, the kind of core groups of our young female footballers at grassroots level. One of the things that we're trying to do and I'm trying to do is make that applicable and introduce the different themes of female health. So if we are talking about our puberty age group, we know that puberty is starting anywhere from age 8 or 9 and can go all the way up 14, 15, 16 for some young girls. So what we want to be thinking about is when we have an age group, how are we or what should we be thinking about in terms of giving all of those female players the tools to be successful on and off the pitch, especially when we're thinking about these younger age groups. It's introducing what is happening during puberty. I know that they learn in school and different schools have different curriculums, but I think we can go more into detail about the impact of puberty on sports performance and even just introducing it and helping them to learn in a safe space of what's actually happening and the changes that are occurring from age 8, 9, all the way up to 15, 16. Understanding puberty is really important. Understanding what a cycle and a period menstrual cycle is, that it's not just about a bleed. And for so many people, whether it's a coach, whether it's a parent, whether it's a player, it's actually just breaking down those terms. Puberty is A, your menstrual cycle is B. And how do we help players to understand that it isn't just about a bleed, it's about the whole month? And how are we helping our players during training as well as during games? How are we not allowing them to feel insecure, or they're in pain, or they're in discomfort and don't want to attend training? So introducing these themes is really important. As well as that, we want to introduce the theme of sports performance and the correct tools, i.e. the correct gear. We wouldn't send them out to play football without football boots. So the same for me applies when we're thinking about maybe our compression garments, our sports bras, why and how important it is to wear a sports bra, the understanding the implications of being supported on performance is a really important element.
I think that's a great point, because I think there's a lot of issues. I've actually just been having a conversation recently with Siobhan O'Donovan about breast health and posture fitting and all of these things. And I think there's an element of maybe the equipment factoring in dropout rate with young girls. Is that fair to say?
Maybe. I think that we just haven't known what we haven't known. And finally, like with the work Siobhan's doing, like there's this couple of really prominent organizations working within this area, that we didn't know the importance of movement. We didn't know the importance of actually being supported and the impact that could be having on injury and performance rate. These are, especially when we look at our young players who are starting to go through puberty and understanding there's going to be changes to their breast health. Their bodies are going to be changing. Their hips may be their ligaments starting to get a little bit looser. If we're not giving our players the tools they need, how on earth can we then go, we're going to train at 100% and we're not going to get injured and we're going to be super positive all the time? So starting to embed these themes of, when we're looking at, I call them pillars, how do we prepare them to train at their best? How do we prepare them to perform on a game day at their best? And we know, because you and I will have been there have been days where we've been on our cycle and I've still had to show up to training or games and felt awful. And I think that this breakdown, or maybe it's a barrier between coach, player, parent, these are the things we need to start introducing early, because as I mentioned, I've done a couple of recent workshops already this year. And one of the big parts of feedback that came back was, this has been amazing. We've never all been in a room where the parent and the player and the coach had the opportunity to hear the same information and understand from a scientific point of view, but also from a practical point of view, of how knowing about these elements and actually not being afraid to say, there is a huge chance if you have an under 12, under 13 team, at least 4 or 5 of those players could be on their cycle at any one time. They could be mid-cycle and having a bit of a dip and not be feeling 100%. And how are we approaching that conversation to go, how's everyone feeling? Is everyone okay? And for a player to feel comfortable or confident to go, I'm on today, I'm a little bit tired, but I'm okay. We're not there yet 100% at grassroots level. We know that. But in my opinion, this will hopefully evolve the more confident we're getting to talk about female health.
Let me ask you a question, because this is interesting, because you're saying that we're not quite there at the grassroots level. I'm not even sure we're there at the professional level, and I'm honest. For somebody to kind of go, I'm feeling a bit tired today because of selection.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything in case I'm not selected for that reason.
Yeah.
But I don't think at under 12 level, they're probably at that point, there's probably more of a taboo of talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So what can coaches or parents do to allow young girls to have that confidence, say, you know what, I am a bit tired today? And then we can talk about what can players do to make themselves feel a little bit better.
Part of it, I think, is just that awareness. I think having for me, one of the really important things that grassroots club must adapt to. I know it's hard and I know interventions are hard, but it's a non-negotiable to me. There needs to be education workshops in place for players and parents as well as coaches. I am very much that I feel that female health modules should be as important as your first aid. Like when our coaches go and they do their badges and they're doing their level 1s or level 2s, even at grassroots level, for me, this is a fundamental module. So depending on how we can implement that, there should be workshops for grassroots teams at least once a season where we are reintroducing these themes to go, have we considered the conversation, or have we considered how are we supporting our players? We know that the girls are going to be on the menstrual cycle or getting ready to begin a menstrual cycle. We need to be thinking about how does that impact our games? Have we reminded them the importance of having a good sports bra, and can we signpost them somewhere to get fitted? Have we talked about the importance of sleep and nutrition? Things of being aware of what a cycle looks like. One of the things I had a great conversation with this under 12 team was they didn't really understand that it was more than just the bleed. So what I talked about was understanding what your cycle is and tracking it gives you control to understand that in the month your cycle will, it's a bit like a roller coaster. It goes up and it goes down. And understanding that if you're feeling tired or grumpy, that there might actually be another reason for that. And they were like, oh, this is amazing. And I didn't know this. So even just going, when you start getting your cycles, we want to keep track of that. And this is the reason why.
So I suppose that brings me on to cycle tracking then. First of all, if you're a parent or a coach that's listening, what options do we have with regards to teaching about tracking?
I am very much on your wavelength. I feel, especially at grassroots level, I think is that girls just need to have an idea of how long their cycle is. I don't necessarily believe that it needs to be shared at grassroots level. I think that is something for the player and for the family to be able to help, and parents support their young player. So there are so many free apps just to get an idea for a player. I think it's the empowerment on them so that they get awareness of understanding their cycle length. Also, we know how important a cycle is. So when we are also thinking about deficiencies and your red S and underfueling and underperforming and injury, again, we want to empower athletes. So at grassroots level, I would be saying we should be signposting our players to go, look, there are these apps, they're free. And all you do is you're keeping track of it. And this is why. This will make you that we know that you're having a cycle, which is a sign of optimal health. That's first and foremost, because at the end of the day, the well-being of a female player is more important than anything else. So for these young girls to understand having periods is a sign of your health, then it's a really important thing. And then for them to understand, and again, this all comes through education, right? I think it's very difficult to expect coaches to be able to go in and give all of this information. But I think just having an awareness to go, having a cycle is really important for your health. We understand some of the signs and symptoms can be pain, can be discomfort, can be heavy bleeding. And if that's impacting your training or your game, we want you to know that that doesn't have to be the case. And here are some simple signposting of things you can do, whether it's nutrition, whether it's taking some preventative and increasing iron intake. There is lots of practical tips and tools that coaches can be doing. They need to be signposted by learning from somewhere, which again comes back to your workshops.
Yeah, it does. And I think from a tracking perspective, take it on a paper diary, or as you said, you've got the app. So what do they write down though? Because obviously, is it just when you get your bleed, or is there other things that they might want to take note of?
I think again, this all varies, right? I think that if you're looking at your younger age groups, anywhere from 11 to 13, maybe you're under 13s, you're really just thinking about, are you having a cycle and how many days is it? We want to establish that there is a regular cycle. I think as you get older, I think then you can go into more details of you're having dips in month and ovulation. And I think that tends to affect women at different age groups. So in our younger kind of tween population, it's more just about cramping and fatigue and tiredness. So for me, I would be just saying, we just want to get an idea whether you're writing it on your calendar and you cross it over to go, this is the first day of my bleed and this is the last day of my bleed, so that girls understand the first day of your bleed is the first day of the cycle. I don't think we need to overcomplicate it. I think we just need to establish the basics at a younger level. And then as they get older, we can start to go into more detail because girls are more comfortable talking a little bit older. And my hope is that by the time my 11s get to 16s, they'll have each year learned something a little bit more and a little bit more in depth.
Okay. So we've got to the point of please track, please check that you've got one. And if you haven't listened to our hypothalamic amenorrhea podcast that we did with Greta Jarvis, do go and have a listen to that, because that talks to you about what happens if you then lose your period. And it's very important to say that hypothalamic amenorrhea is a potential thing, but we had a lot of traffic from just that podcast. A lot of people contacted us to say, I think that my daughter has that. And obviously, our first thing was, please go and see your healthcare provider. And it's a diagnosis of exclusion. But there was a lot of people who said, I'm having some issues. And this is another reason why we kind of got together and wanted to do a podcast on this topic. So the girls are tracking, really regular. It's game day. Somebody comes in and goes, oh no, it came in a day that I wasn't expecting. What can the club do to navigate those situations or training?
Yeah, I think as well, one of the big things that I like to do is go, how do we support a player who's on their cycle during and after, like on a training day or in a game day? And I think having solutions. So obviously having a sanitary wear bag that's in the football bag or that can just be accessed. And the girls know if you get stuck or you're in trouble, no, this bag is there. You go and help yourself. The other part is as well, I think what's great now is we've so many more period underwear brands that are out there that are helping girls. I know what it's like firsthand to feel really uncomfortable going out and playing on the first day of my cycle. And some girls get on with some sanitary wear and some girls don't. So the period underwear is a fantastic addition to help girls feel secure and feel prepared to be able to go out and play. But absolutely having a sanitary bag in your bag that is restocked once a month. And you might find it sits there, it doesn't get used for a year or two. But just the fact of knowing the girls don't have to worry that there is something there and it gets reminded every couple of weeks or every week. Girls, don't forget, if you need it, it's here. It's such a simple way to reduce such a massive barrier. There doesn't even have to be a conversation. And it's been so influential in so many clubs just by even that announcement.
Love that. So we've covered breast care. You can potentially get your players posture fitted, but bra fitted. Menstrual cycle, we've had a brief touch on. Let's come on to your specialist area, which is pelvic health, because that's another area that really there's been a big push to try and raise awareness. Because I think I read a paper. Is it 59% of track athletes have had issues with some form of incontinence?
Yeah,
It's something like that.
I think it could even be in the 60s. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it comes to pelvic health, I think when we're looking at it in the professional game, or I'm looking at with my everyday female athletes, and they're your moms, they're your CrossFitters or your high rockers. For me, a lot of it is about education, and a lot of that goes into one of the big things I do with my younger teams is we do a lot in terms of including and integrating their S&C. So a fundamental for me is actually girls need to do more neuromuscular training early. But actually the importance of understanding how to breathe and how to activate their core. I think one of the big things that we see with female athletes, and it doesn't matter if you're professional or grassroots, there's so many variations of it. If you're active, you're an athlete in my mind. But because we've never had awareness of what these muscles do and the impact of them around the pelvic girdle, your hamstrings, your quads, your lower back, your tummy, understanding that they're there and having simple ways to go, are we doing any yoga work where we use it as part of our warm-up and it takes 2 minutes? One of our big ones is we do child's pose and we do a little bit of downward dog with some gentle breathing. Even just introducing that into the girls' warm-up has become a game changer, because so many girls and so many of us don't necessarily have the best optimal pattern. And when we look at pelvic floor issues, we're either not using the muscles or we're using them too much and then they're gripping. And having that ability and that awareness, for me, that fundamental comes down to, if you ain't breathing and your inner cylinder isn't being able to relax and engage, it just holds on. It just holds on. And then over time, eventually that can lead to an injury somewhere, or it's having to hold on and it's being caused by something happening somewhere else in the body. So again, it's all education, but introducing simple warm-up exercises that the players can do every day. I've even brought it into my professional team. I'm like, are we doing our yoga? They're like, oh, it's so boring. I'm like, it is. But it forces you to let go, because you're so strong. You're used to training at such a high level. It's not always load. A lot of the time, it's a deload. And when we look at the nervous system and the impact of the nervous system, those pelvic floor muscles and your pelvis take so much impact during running, during power movements. So it has to be able to function. So for me, again, pelvic health, we know, is my thing, but I've just introduced it in a really soft way. They do a little bit of downward dog. We focus on closing our eyes, relaxing our body, taking a nice couple of breaths into the belly. bosh. They're just learning. They're learning those fundamentals.
So there's nothing wrong with a wee bit relaxation. And Chloe Evans was also on saying the same thing a few podcasts ago as well. The other thing I was going to say to you, obviously, when it comes to obviously pelvic health, there's lots of one of the things that I know, and one of the reasons why I contacted you straight away, I was like, I need to know more about this because I had major knowledge gaps, having been in female football for a very long time. But it isn't just about pelvic floor dysfunction, is it? And there's a lot of other facets to it. However, let's talk about incontinence, because that's probably one of the ones that young players are probably not going to go to coaching staff and probably chat about. That's one of the, again, another taboo, another large potential source of embarrassment. What can clubs do in order to educate their players, but perhaps don't have the confidence to do it? What can they do at that point?
I think sometimes even we know the stats are really high. We're seeing it across grassroots, across loads of sports as well as professional. So part of it is one of the things that I've often suggested is let's put some posters up in the bathrooms on the back of the door. Common things that we think are normal, but they're not. So things like leakage, things like urgency, things like pelvic pain, just understanding that most of us have a look what sign is on the back of the door, don't we? And we're like, oh, and you do learn something. So just having that, we're putting it up in the club that I work for soon. And it's just, again, the more the girls see it, the more they will recognize, I'm going to keep seeing this information. So for me, just even the awareness and the visibility, putting it in the bathrooms is one of the best places that you can. Having a big signpost beside the sink is brilliant. Having it on the back of the doors. Again, highlighting, and that comes through the workshops that we're setting it out, that all of the coaches to go. Sometimes the benefit of having everyone in the same room is it creates that relaxation. So everyone's heard the same information. So there's that little bit more improved confidence to go, this is common, but it's not normal. But also saying, if your child is experiencing this, here's where you can go. Because I do see, and I do treat a lot of younger teens and younger. And a lot of that, again, comes down to poor mechanics and a lot of bracing and not learning how to breathe. So if we can, again, introduce that into some of our training drills, that we're not holding our breath. We see all these kids doing all these movements, but actually they're just like this, and understanding. We just want you, I make the girls sing, but we just learning to go, there is help out there. These are common symptoms of things that are not working quite well. This is what you should do.
Yeah, I was at kind of pelvic health talk, and they were talking about that sometimes actually when players shout, that's when they can lose control.
It's a huge amount of intra-abdominal pressure. So what happens is by holding, if anyone was listening to this, if they hold their breath and block their nose, you'll feel this buildup of pressure. That pressure has to go somewhere, and it goes down into the pelvis. So if you think of a player running at full speed, or a striker about to get onto the end of a ball, they are running and they are trying to recruit as much muscle. So what they do is they brace and they create this big load of inter-abdominal pressure that has to go down. And they feel it at different times. So you think of your gymnasts when they're going to tumble or they're going to get up onto the bars. They have to recruit the power from somewhere. But what they haven't been taught is how to recruit that support without the down pressure. And that's where the term Valsalva and down pressure comes from. And it can be retrained. And I think what we want to be able to do is embed it into your grassroots level or your basic level of training, as opposed to learning maybe not the best strategies. They're all strategies. The strategy that most power players, plyometric players, anyone that's using these big volumes of lifting heavy, you see all the weightlifters, they make these really big noises and they really grace and everything goes through their cheeks, but that pressure has to go somewhere. So we have to help them to learn not to create that down pressure.
Yeah. Now, bringing you on to something else, obviously puberty, growth, maturation, players grow, and certainly when I worked in primarily young male football, these young boys and the girls especially are like Bambi on ice. They grow relatively rapidly. As a kind of, obviously, you're a mum as well. With your young girls, what have you noticed with regards to as they grow? What changes do they go through? What have you noticed?
We actually call it, I love that you use that term, we call it the family error. You notice that when a young child, boy or girl, is going through or beginning puberty, that's going to happen at a different rate. Different kids at different parts of the season will go through that Bambi stage where all of a sudden they look like they can't run and they look like that they've lost all of their awareness of their body. And actually, it's completely normal. And one of the things that we, especially me noticing with Isabella, she's growing massively and she's starting to get those knee pains and she's starting to get the little bit of heel pain. And one of the big things we do is looking at her load across the week and the month. And also she's training that is helping her muscles to support her joints. So nutrition is also really important for us. Nutrition, high protein, getting that balanced diet. She's sleeping a lot more. She's tired. Awareness to go, there will be times in the season for possibly multiple seasons where a team might dip in form, players might dip in form. They're looking a bit sluggish on the pitch. We have to be looking at a 360 approach to go, where are they as a player, as an individual? Are they mid-puberty at 12, 13, 14? Are they growing? They need more fueling. They might be having a little bit of growth plate issues. So everything's growing at different rates. So needs to be a little bit of awareness to go, okay, and am I doing everything to support them? If they are playing too much, do we need to cut that back? A lot of the time, recovery, we know, improves performance. And a lot of the time it's the misconceptions being, you got to train more, you got to train more, you got to train more. And that can lead to even further breakdown of performance or an increase in potential injury or injury risk.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Because there is no crystal ball. It's not like you can go, oh, you're going to get injured next Saturday. And we can say, hey, you know what, let's keep you out of there. Yeah. But there are practical things that we can put in place. A couple of things that I used to notice when I was working in one of the academies. The parents would come and say to me, oh my God, they are eating me out of house and home. Yeah. So what do you notice with regards to nutrition intake at times when they're growing? Because I've got a story that I'm going to tell you after you're done with this part of the question.
I think the big thing, even in my household, is my food bill's getting more and more expensive. She's just hungry all the time. She's just hungry. So what I'm trying to do is just make sure that intake, I'm happy for her to eat as much as she can because she's either recovering or getting ready for training and then there's school. So I think it's about balance. We need to make sure that the kids are getting enough protein. We want to make sure they're getting enough fiber and vegetables so that they're getting the nutrients. It all comes down to balance. We want to fuel our kids and understanding that sweets and sugar isn't the way to do that. There needs to be an approach to understanding balance. Kids need to get enough of everything, as we all do. I think it can be really overcomplicated, and I think it can be, I think one of the big things I'm sure you've seen is that kids aren't fueling enough. They're not eating enough. Bella's hungry all the time. So I'm like, okay, so I just have she's little and often at the moment. And I've noticed a bit of a trend over the last 6 to 9 months where there's certain periods where she's just sleeping a bit more and I'm topping her up with her smoothies. She's getting, we do a huge amount with our team, even though they're grassroots on preparation. And if a game kickoff has changed, what you might have had for an early kickoff is going to be different for an afternoon kickoff. So what are we thinking in terms of carbohydrate intake and protein intake? And I say to the kids before training, you got to bring your 2 drinks, you got to bring your electrolytes, and you got to have your snack for after. And what snacks are you going to have? So you can actually get the kids involved in saying, what do we think is a good snack to bring? What do we think is maybe a not so great snack? And we're helping them.
And this is the thing I was going to bring up. There's a difference between eating healthy and they're having, for example, a salad to then go and play football. Yeah. Football requires calories. And it requires carbohydrate. Yeah. And so there's an element, and I have to be very careful because I don't want to come out of my scope of practice because I am not a nutritionist. But when you think about what these kids need calories for, they're playing a sport, possibly playing 2, maybe 3 times a week with regards to football. You then add PE on top. You then add cognitive load with regards to, we're going through exams, I've got school, I've got lots of things going on. And then you add on growth. Yeah. Your body is doing a ton just with those things. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think there is a gender influence of women eat small. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, do I think they need to eat the right things? Of course. But I do. I think especially young girls, the amount that they are doing, they need to eat more. And I even see it later on in careers,
Yeah.
eating small.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I
There's a history of it, isn't there? And I think that understanding of what is your food, it's energy, and it helps your body perform. And we see it, and we see it across all levels. And I'm sure we've experienced it ourselves in different ways. There's this bias of what we should be having, but for lots of children and a lot of young athletes, they are not fueling enough. And you think, oh, I've been in PE today and we played this game. And then you come home and you might have a little snack and you got to get your homework done. And then you got to go to training and you're expected to be at peak level. And if we even think of ourselves, we've had a huge long day at clinic or at work, and then we've got to come home and we've got half an hour to put something in. And then we're expected to go and play. And these kids are just on this Ferris wheel, like it's just going and going. And I think as well, when we think about the impact of the basics of even with your cycle is a sign of health. So linking into the missing period, if we are not having a cycle, then that is telling us something. That is our body saying to us, I'm not coping. And understanding during the cycle and just before we come on our cycle, I need to be thinking about increasing my iron. I need to be using my nutrition to help me to cope with the hormone fluctuations. It's not happening enough, and kids don't know about it, and we didn't know about it. So we're learning more with research, and that's why getting the basics, just are you having a period? And then you might have the girl who's 15 who hasn't started her periods. So that's where just having the basics to get us into a better place of basic foundations, basic tools to help our female players thrive, and understanding what's normal and what's not. If you are missing periods, we need to speak to the doctor. If you are having incontinence or leaking, we need to speak to the doctor, or we need to see a physio. If you are having really bad periods that mean that you're in bed or you're having heavy bleeds, we can get you help. You are not alone. And breaking down that stigma, and it needs to be more visibility, more conversations, and more signposting to go, if this is happening, this is the pathway, this is where we go.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot for your last question. Take some time to think about it if you want. What are the top 3 things that a club must have to ensure that they are looking after young female health?
Okay. Number 1 would be sanitary products in all changing rooms and toilets, definitely the toilets. I think 2, having those sign posters up of the female footballer checklist. Have you A, B, C, D? For me, the female health workshop is a non-negotiable. Whether it's through a big governing body, there should be a module there that helps all of the coaches to give them that access to the information.
Sarah, it's been absolutely lovely to have you on. As always, thank you very much for giving us your time. If you're out there and you're working with young female players, please remember it is never normal for them to lose their period. Please make sure that they are tracking so they can check that they are having no issues there. Please also remember that they probably need to eat more than you should. If they're sleeping a lot, they're probably also growing. And just look after them. We will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to Women's Football Hub. The information within this podcast is for informational purposes only. No material on this podcast is intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please contact your doctor or another healthcare professional if you have any questions about anything raised in this podcast.